Happy 30th birthday to me! What better way to celebrate my birthday than by talking about one of my favorite Oz adaptations, and one that I watched when it aired back in 2007, Tin Man, starring Zooey Deschanel, Alan Cumming, and Richard Dreyfuss. The story revolves around a 20-something-year-old woman named DG, played by Zooey Deschanel, who works as a waitress in a small Kansas town. She feels like she's meant for bigger and better things, that there's so much more than this provincial life and all that Disney princess crap. She has a series of cryptic dreams that, as we'll later find out, are actually repressed memories of another dimension known as the Outer Zone. Soldiers of an evil empress named Azcadelia are sent to kill DG, but her parents send her through the cyclone and into the OZ she goes. She meets up with equivalents of the classic Oz characters, including Glitch, a political prisoner whose brain was removed, a vengeful police officer, aka Tin Man, named Wyatt Kane, and a telepathic creature known as Raw. Despite using the Wonderful Wizard of Oz as a structural model, especially in the first of the 3 episodes, Tin Man does get its own identity as it progresses. A lot of critics compared it to the 2004 reimagined Battlestar Galactica series that also aired on the Sci Fi Channel, which I'm sorry to say I've never seen, but I get what they're referring to. Tin Man takes a lot of influence from science fiction and dark fantasy, but it's not a simple reboot or a reimagining. As we later find out, the Outer Zone is actually Oz many years in the future. The events of The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, with the original Dorothy Gale having gone there and had her adventures, all still happened. I think this was a wise decision because it would have been all too easy to simply tell the original story over again as if it never happened. Plus, it makes the statement that history can repeat itself. This series introduced me to Zooey Deschanel as a leading lady. It was an amazing vehicle for her since she looks just like what I would imagine a modern grown-up version of Dorothy would be like. She's puzzled by what's going on around her, but she still manages to work in several sarcastic quips at just how strange everything is. The biggest shoutouts of the supporting cast go to Alan Cumming, who's always fantastic in everything he's in, and Richard Dreyfuss as the wizard equivalent known as the Mystic Man. And even though Neal McDonough was a horrible M. Bison, he does a great job playing a Clint Eastwood-esque gunslinger who really is as heartless as the Tin Man is always purported to be, but rarely ever is. Then we get to Kathleen Robertson as the villain Azcadelia. Even when I first saw this series, I felt like something was missing. She came across as someone trying to be really evil and intimidating rather than just naturally emanating menace. But this is for a couple reasons. Robertson said that she deliberately underplayed the character and didn't want to make her loud and overt in order to distinguish herself from Margaret Hamilton. Plus, as we later find out, Azcadelia is an otherwise good person who has been possessed by the spirit of a witch, so her heavy restraint is partially because she's in a constant state of internal conflict. Still, every time I watch this miniseries, I see her trying really hard to be evil. So hard, in fact, that I can only imagine how many outtakes there must have been of her just bursting out laughing at the slightest provocation. When you're trying that hard to be intimidating, the littlest things can set you off. But then again, I was a horny 16-year-old when this series aired, and between Zooey Deschanel and Kathleen Robertson, it didn't take a lot to set me off either.
Ow! Christ, Jake, take it easy, man.
Ow!
Speaking of which, despite the series getting exceptionally high ratings and a ton of Emmy nominations, the reviews were pretty mixed. One particularly harsh review came from Brian Lowry of Variety. He said that Tin Man was a, quote, semi-surreal adaptation of The Wizard of Oz stitched together with bits of The Matrix, Blade Runner, and Snow White to create a brooding fantasy that, understandably given the variety of influences, proves a bit of a mess, and whose look and action sequences don't fully deliver the goods to the target audience of fanboys and their imaginary girlfriends. Damn, Brian! You can tell that this review was written when internet culture was still in its relative infancy, and before social media had become a dominant force in critical discourse. Can you imagine the backlash that a comment like that would get nowadays? Well, Brian, my imaginary girlfriends and I sentence you to write out an apology on the palace walls 100 times!
If it's not done by sunrise, I'll cut your balls off.
Overall, Tin Man is one of my favorite Oz adaptations. It gave me exactly what I wanted as a darker, sci-fi version of the original Oz mythos, and at the age when I was ready for such a thing. It wasn't the first dark take on the Land of Oz, and it wouldn't be the last. 10 years later, another dark series called Emerald City aired on NBC to similarly mixed results. What did I think of it? Stick around a little later in Oztober to find out. My imaginary girlfriends and I will be waiting.